Welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. The City Club was founded 100 years ago, as you heard, as a meeting place where civic-minded individuals could come together for free discussion of the community's social, political, and economic challenges. The City Club continues to have as its mission a commitment to inform, educate, and inspire citizens by presenting significant ideas and providing opportunities for dialogue in a collegial setting. With that as a backdrop, the City Club is pleased to host today's debate between the Democratic candidates for Ohio's 9th Congressional District. Moderating the debate will be the Plain Dealer's own Henry Gomez. Henry is a politics writer for Ohio's largest newspaper. He joined the Plain Dealer in 2005 after graduating from Youngstown State University and working for the Tribune Chronicle and Crane's Cleveland Business. He has written for the Plain Dealer's business section, covered Cleveland City Hall, and reported on Cuyahoga County government. Henry has been very active in covering politics in Ohio's redrawn congressional districts. Ladies and gentlemen, Henry Gomez.
Thank you, Deborah. I'm excited to be here today moderating this debate among the Democratic candidates for Ohio's 9th Congressional District. Slow population growth has cost Ohio 2 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, and come 2013, portions of northern Ohio's 2 largest cities, Cleveland and Toledo, will be united in a single district across the Lake Erie shoreline. The contenders you are about to hear from, including 2 sitting members of Congress who are longtime friends, are participating in one of the most closely watched congressional races in the country this year. First, the rules. Each candidate will have a total of 2 minutes to make an opening statement. After these opening exchanges, I will ask candidates a series of questions before we turn the program over to the traditional City Club question and answer period. Now, the candidates. Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur of Toledo, representative of what's now the 9th District since 1983. Congressman Dennis Kucinich, Cleveland's former mayor and representative of what's now the 10th District since 1997. And Graham Veysey, a small business owner from Cleveland's Ohio City neighborhood. This debate is presented in partnership with the City Club of Cleveland, the Plain Dealer, and IdeaStream. We are very pleased to welcome our audience with us here today and those listening to WCPN 90.3 IdeaStream. I know many of you in the audience support one of these candidates, and we appreciate you giving everyone a chance to be heard. Now, on to the debate. The order of presentation was determined by a drawing several minutes ago. Congressman Kucinich, you will present first.
Thank you. People know me. They know I stand up for them when they have a battle with a bank, utility, or insurance company. They know I work to protect their jobs. Whenever workers need help, I'm there, on the picket line, at the lockout, helping to fight decertification, rallying to save jobs, to save workers' benefits, to protect workers' rights, taking legal action to save steelworkers' jobs at the Cleveland Works, to save auto workers' jobs, to save Teamsters' jobs at Cargill Salt Mine, to save the jobs of hospital workers, to save postal workers and NASA workers from privatization, to reverse privatization at DFS, a battle I fought for 7 years until we won. We worked together to fight issue 2, to protect police, fire, and teachers' rights, to protect workers and their pensions, and we won. As a leading member of the 2 top committees for labor, I'm pushing back in Congress against efforts which try to destroy the right to organize, to crush locked-out workers, and undermine the NLRB. That's why it's sad to see the Swift-boat-type advertising tactics of my friend from Toledo, who for an entire year ignored locked-out workers at Subaki in her own district, and has taken $28,000 in contributions from American Crystal Sugar, which locked out 1,300 workers to try to break the union. Today we celebrate John Glenn's voyage, but last year she voted to privatize functions at NASA Glenn and then took a big contribution from a California corporation that would profit from the privatization. She subverted the earmark ban and requested a $10 million earmark and received tens of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from beneficiaries. She's taken hundreds of thousands from war contractors while voting $500 billion to continue Bush's wars. Her votes for the Iraq War have cost my Cleveland district and her own district in Toledo $2 billion each. The fact that she's from out of town and doesn't know our community, that's beside the point. Because if the corrupt system in Washington can ensnare this fine lady, there aren't too many people who can take it on. I appreciate your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Kucinich. Now we will have opening remarks from Congresswoman Kaptur.
Thank you very much, and thanks to the City Club and all of you for coming. I am the Jobs Democrat in this race. I have lived in the 9th District my entire life. I haven't sought to leave it, nor have I said that I would move into it once elected. I have a record of real results. All across the coast, there are now going to be 5 counties in the 9th District. I know the turf. I know the texture of this district. Here's my plan for job creation, and it's working in the regions that I've represented. We identify growth clusters working with local interest groups, whether it's solar, sensors, biomedicine, advanced energy, maritime interests, or the turnpike. We then return federal support for robust research and development, working with local institutions, and then we leverage public and private partnerships into actual spin-off companies and resulting job creation. That's what we've done in Toledo, 6,500 solar jobs in new companies like Nextronics, Advanced Distributed Generation, First Solar, Greenfields Energy over in Lorain County, and so many more. If we take a look at the sensor work that we've been doing at Lorain County Community College in conjunction with Nortec, we're talking about over 600 jobs that could be created here in that sector. I would say to my colleagues, you know, if we look at the recovery bill that President Obama proposed, that I strongly supported, the Port of Toledo received over $20 million in that recovery effort for new container cranes that are offloading as we speak. The Port of Lorain received $4 million with lots of effort. Guess how much Cleveland received? $0. I think that you have to really look at the record and say, who's the job creator across the coast? Who has the committee positions to make a difference? I'm number 2 on appropriations. These are the subcommittees on which I serve, so important to our region and the Great Lakes: transportation, housing, defense, agriculture, and budget. That's money in the bank for the people across this region and an opportunity to continue to grow an economy in the free market part of this state. Thank you so very much for this opening.
Thank you, Congresswoman Kaptur. Now we'll have opening remarks from Mr. Veysey.
My name's Graham Veysey, and I'm running because Congress is broken, and it needs to be fixed. It's broken because we're mortgaging my generation's future and our country's future with a $15 trillion debt that neither of my 2 opponents have brought up because they've helped create it. And that $15 trillion will be $26 trillion in 10 years unless we do something about it. So that's why I'm standing up and I'm speaking out. I'm calling for fresh ideas that will tackle the problem so that we can continue to invest in economic recovery, in education, and in the environment. Congress is broken because people have lost faith in Congress. It's got just a 9% approval rating. That's the worst ever. Congress should be one of the greatest pillars of our democracy, yet people have lost faith because you look around the new 9th District and you see poverty rampant. In Ms. Kaptur's district, Toledo, it's got the #1 rise in poverty in America. In Mr. Kucinich's Cleveland, we've got the #2 in terms of poverty rate. I'm going to be going to the neighborhoods tomorrow to talk to the folks who have been ravaged by these dated policies of my 2 opponents. I'm running for Congress because March 6th will be a referendum on Congress. March 6th will be the chance where people in the new 9th District can either vote for the future or vote for the same old, same old. Sitting on stage with me is Congressman Status and Congresswoman Quo. They're Congresspeople status quo because that's what they represent. I'm looking to earn your vote over the next 15 days. So please visit my website, grahamforcongress.org. I look forward to the next 45 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Veysey. Thank you, candidates. Now we turn to the questions. When questions are asked to all candidates will be given 1 minute to respond. But when I direct a question to an individual candidate, that candidate will have 1 minute to respond, while the other two candidates will have 30 seconds. I, as moderator, reserve the right to ask follow-up questions to all or individual candidates. Follow-up responses will be allowed a 30-second response. Each of you on this stage talks about the importance of jobs, so let's get that one right out of the way now. To the incumbents, Congressman Kucinich and Congresswoman Kaptur, what is one recent bill that you have championed that is in effect today and is helping to create jobs in your district? And then when we get to Mr. Veysey, if you could also take a minute, since you're a newcomer, to talk about what one bill that you, Graham Veysey, would champion if elected. And we'll start with Congresswoman Kaptur.
All right, probably the one of the most important bills that I could mention would be our fiscal 2010 defense appropriation bill. Along our coast, what are we doing? With Case Western, a reserve here in Cuyahoga County, the largest combat mental health initiative in the country, going on to serve our returning veterans in cooperation with the Ohio National Guard, inventing real answers to post-traumatic stress and other neurological related illnesses. The most modern fighter wing in the United States with the F-35 out of the 180th in the western part of the district, solar energy and hydrogen research ongoing along the north coast, the new Army cannon in Erie Industrial Park, geospatial airship research that is conducted in consortium with the NASA facility here at Brook Park, and the promotion of strategic metals industries across the north here, beryllium, magnesium, titanium, aluminum, so important to the preservation of our defense industrial base metalworking capacity here in this part of the Great Lakes.
Congressman Kucinich?
I voted for the American Recovery Act, which did bring benefits to our district, including at one event announced by Vice President Joe Biden over at the airport that I believe my friend attended with me. I want to state that the American Recovery Act is something I strongly supported. And I think that President Obama did the right thing. We just need more money. And one of the things that I've done is to bring an innovative proposal to Congress called the National Emergency Employment Defense Act that would, for the first time, decouple our spending from war and focus on creating jobs where the government uses an innovative mechanism to basically invest in our country, rebuild our roads, our bridges, our water system, our sewer systems, our colleges, our universities. It's about time that we put millions of Americans back to work. That's what we need to do, and we can't simply rely on the war machine to develop the jobs that we need in the future. We need to start developing jobs and technologies for peace.
Thank you, Mr. Veysey. One bill that you would champion if elected?
I would introduce a bill that addresses the fiscal crisis that we're in. The $15 trillion debt compromises the economic investment that we need to make in northern Ohio. I think we need to build on our manufacturing base, but we need to shed the Rust Belt image and create a digital belt along the North Coast. I'm of the digital age. I think we can fill the vacant buildings and warehouses and factories with data centers that employs people with great wages. I think we need to also look at the opportunity to become also the vacation belt. We have Lake Erie, which is a $10 billion a year economic engine. Let's leverage that and make the North Coast a robust economic engine that puts people back to work.
Thank you. Congresswoman Kaptur, you have a new television commercial, which your opponent, Congressman Kucinich, mentioned in his opening statement. This commercial calls attention to 3 of the congressman's no votes. It casts him as anti-jobs, anti-veterans, and anti-seniors by emphasizing individual items that were parts of larger bills that also included military spending, which he has long opposed. How is your ad an honest and fair representation of your friend from Cleveland?
Well, I think that if you look at those bills, the prescription drug benefit bill that is benefiting tens of millions of Americans across this country, Part D, was passed in 1999 when President Clinton was president. It did include other items in the bill, but in the end, you have to vote for or against a measure on balance, whether it is better for the country or worse for the country. The congressman, in voting no in 1999, voted against Part D in Medicare. And that means that he did not vote for that prescription drug benefit. In terms of veterans, and I might say in terms of defense, the gentleman has never voted for a defense bill in his life. I understand where he stands. The problem is that when we face an enemy, we have to make sure that we support our troops in the field. That's what that bill had to do with, and the support of those that we send on America's behalf around the world. We do have a difference of opinion on that. These bills also sometimes contain other provisions, and he voted no. No on veterans, no on the funding for some of the jobs I've talked about here in Ohio and northern Ohio, and also no on Part D Medicare.
Congressman Kucinich, a 30-second response.
Come on, Marcy. I mean, you understand the difference between a blue dog amendment, which I voted against, and the Democratic alternative, which I voted for. And the blue dog amendment, which was advanced by conservative Democrats, wanted to increase the military budget by $4 billion. And I think that we have to recognize that we have to stop sacrificing the rest of America's priorities to keep feeding this war machine. Seniors know that I stand for them. You know, I offered a prescription drug plan was part of Medicare for All, H.R. 676. And veterans, you know what? There's a hospital in Parma that's opening up this coming week because of my efforts, and it's for veterans.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Veysey, would you like to get in on this one?
I just find it amazing that we keep hearing my friend from Toledo and my friend from Cleveland, when the truth is where they both have been, and it's Washington, D.C. Combined 70 years as politicians. We need fresh ideas, and I'm not hearing it from either of them.
Thank you. Mr. Veysey, you're a newcomer, and you're talking a lot about poverty up and down this new 9th District, but you also do not live in the district. You've had many opportunities, apprenticeships at Nantucket Nectars and Meet the Press. You have a burgeoning career in new media. So I'm curious, how do you relate to those in need? How do you bridge the gap between haves such as yourself and the have-nots that you aim to represent?
Well, I had a lot of conversations today at 5 in the morning when I was at shift change at the Avon Lake Ford plant. And they want a fresh face. They want fresh ideas. And that's what this campaign's about. I'm running for Congress to represent the new 9th District. And if you look at the Constitution permits me and allows me to run in this race. So, Mr. Gomez, it's not about the haves and have-nots, but it's the people who are suffering, who've got poverty on their mind, who want jobs, and I'm going to be able to run for office and actually provide that. Where you look at the record of the two people that I'm running against, they're combined 70 years as politicians, and they haven't provided that.
Would you like to take 30 more seconds and tell me something that you plan to talk about with these folks tomorrow, how Graham Veysey will stand up for people who are poor?
So we've heard the conversation about the wars in Iraq and the wars in Afghanistan. Well, the war on poverty is being lost, and I want to be the new soldier in that fight. We've heard for decades about the war on poverty, but we've never addressed how we're going to break the cycle of poverty. I'm going to invest in early childhood development. In Ohio, less than 50% of our kids are enrolled in early childhood development. And if you look at the indicators and the research, that's going to be the way that we break the cycle of poverty, and I'm going to champion that when I'm in the United States House of Representatives.
Thank you. 30-second response from Congressman Kucinich.
We have to see the connection between war and poverty. We have a high level of poverty in this country for this reason, because of the trillions of dollars we spend or will spend on war, because of the Bush tax cuts, because of trade laws which have accelerated jobs out of this country, because of corporations who are driving down wages and benefits. That's why it's so important to fight for workers' rights and for a living wage. We have to see that we have an obligation to create an economy where there's jobs for all, health care for all, education for all, retirement security for all, and peace. And it is possible to do so, and frankly, I'm the guy who's been taking on the status quo in Washington ever since I've been there.
Thank you. Congresswoman Kaptur.
Thank you very much. I could say you can take on the status quo, but who really makes a difference in the end in actual bills that get passed? Let me say, in terms of poverty, one of the most important actions we can take is to increase the use of community development credit unions across this country. Initiatives that I have championed and was just talking yesterday in Lorraine to some of the community leaders and ministers there about what can be done to capture wealth in every neighborhood and turn it to the people who live there. In terms of agriculture, the Senior Farmers Market Coupon Program, which functions across this district to link local producers and local consumers, does not exist in Cuyahoga County. It's a bill I authored that are helping thousands and thousands, actually millions of seniors across this country procure product that is locally grown. That helps both seniors and local producers.
Thank you. Congressman Kucinich, some of your most enthusiastic supporters are Hollywood heavyweights and people with national profile. You've twice run for president, and you considered leaving Ohio to run for a congressional seat across the country. More than once, your commitment to this district has been questioned. In the spirit of President's Day, let me ask you more specifically, if reelected, will you run for president again?
I'm not a candidate for president, now or in the future. I'm a candidate for Congress. And those who questioned my intention have generally been at the plain dealer, Henry, but I'm not going to hold it against you that you work for them. I want to say that when the redistricting happened, everyone knows the Republicans basically put a target on my back. And everyone understands that there was a real attempt to knock me out of Congress through redistricting. Now, I had people, when that was said, I had people who were saying, well, we'd be glad to have you represent us, but I never wanted to leave this area, and I'm here running. And I might say that I want to thank my friend Marcy Kaptur for being one of those people who actually suggested that if I lost my district here, that you were encouraging me to seek a district in another place. I'm sorry it worked out that we're running for the same seat, but you did provide me with encouragement, and that shows the kind of friend that you've always been.
Congresswoman Kaptur, your response to that statement of friendship.
All I know is that the gentleman from Cleveland didn't work with the Democratic delegation to draw better districts for all of our colleagues in Ohio. The reason that Betty Sutton has such a tough district is because certain members wouldn't cooperate with the rest of the Democrats in the delegation. It makes it very hard for us to have more than 4 out of 16 seats of what remains for Democrats in Ohio. I feel sorry about that, Congressman.
Mr. Veysey, 30 seconds.
When people talk about reaching across the aisle like we've heard, the folks on the same side of the aisle can't even agree. Heck, I'll stand in the aisle when I'm elected to Congress to get things done because we need to stop trying to score political points and we need to find policy solutions because that's what's going to help put Northern Ohio back to work.
Thank you. Congresswoman Kaptur, NARAL rates you lower than any Ohio Democrat in Congress when it comes to a woman's right to choose. What are your personal beliefs when it comes to abortion, and how do those beliefs guide your votes and policymaking as a lawmaker?
Well, they've never changed. Unlike some of the opponents in this race, I have always believed that this isn't the government's business, that families and women should be able to make their own decisions, and that taxpayer dollars should not be used to pay for abortion unless the life of the mother is at stake or rape and incest. I've been a consistent supporter of family planning and full women's health. I support President Obama's compromise that I urged him to adopt that actually respects the rights of women in terms of family planning, but also those of religious conscience. So I think that some mischaracterize my view. I don't know all the votes that NARAL scores, but my votes have been very, very consistent over the years.
Congressman Kucinich, in your 30 seconds, would you please respond to Congresswoman Kaptur's assertion that you've changed? I do note that in 2003, you became a supporter of abortion rights after long voting against them and consistently opposing federal funding for abortion. What changed your mind?
Well, we have to have a capacity to evolve and stop polarizing the country over this issue. A woman's body should not be a battleground. And so what I have done is to say we can create a world and a country where abortions are less likely through prenatal care, postnatal care, child care, universal health care, and a living wage, but to do so within the context of protecting a woman's right to choose. And so the two should not be at odds here. America should not be devoting all this time to trying to insist that women have to follow the dictums of a patriarchal society.
Thank you. Mr. Veysey, you've hammered both of your opponents on this point. 30-second response.
I'm the only pro-choice candidate in this race, despite Congresswoman Kaptur being the longest-serving woman in the U.S. House of Representatives. She's also the longest-serving anti-women's reproductive rights in the U.S. House of Representatives. And the term that Nayrol used was mixed choice, where I'll use anti-choice. Dennis Kucinich has never been consistent on the issue. We'll call him multiple choice. So we've got an anti-choice candidate, we've got a multiple choice candidate, and Graham Veysey is your only pro-choice candidate in this race.
Thank you. The winner of the November general election will represent a portion of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, which is run by Mayor Frank Jackson. Jackson is a Democrat who has proposed sweeping changes, including merit pay for teachers and other, his words, systemic changes. Some of these have been criticized by members of the Democratic Party as being SB 5 light, which all three of you opposed. Republicans are already lining up to support this plan. This question is for all three candidates. Do you support the Jackson plan, and what do you believe you can do as a member of Congress to improve education in urban areas?
Yes, I support Mayor Jackson's plan. I think that we should do away with seniority. I think we should have merit-based pay, because I think we also should have Congress have merit-based pay. But the truth is, if you look at thank you very much. If you look at No Child Left Behind, this is a huge piece of legislation that's been ignored. 2007, Congress should have acted on it. It's 2012. They haven't. That's why Congress is broken, is because they're not putting our kids first. We should provide cover for Mayor Jackson, and I support his plan because we need to put our kids first.
Congressman, do you support the Jackson plan?
I don't know enough about it to give you an answer, but I can tell you this generally. I think that we have to have education for all, quality education, and we have to involve teachers in the process. This attack on teachers is really not appropriate in a democratic society where teachers are the ones whose close relationship helps children unfold. And so teachers need to be better paid, better educated, but to attack the seniority system is to also take with it many people who've dedicated their lives. That's not fair. Now, Mayor Jackson and I are, we work together. Mayor Jackson is supporting me in this campaign, but I'm not certain that I'm going to be supporting his particular approach here. I'm on the Education Committee. I want to see public education well funded. I want to stop spending money on wars that take money away from education. I want to make sure that that we have smaller classroom sizes, that our young people have a chance to learn without the pressures of constant testing, which No Child Left Behind was all about. We have to encourage creativity with our children, but we also have to make sure that the teachers are given incentives to go in that direction as well.
Thank you, Congressman. Congresswoman Kaptur, do you support the Jackson plan?
Let me just say that if my opponent opposes war spending so much, why did he vote to increase the budget limit in 2002 that provided the funding for the war in Iraq? That was the critical vote. And
your thoughts on the Jackson plan before we move on.
I'm going to answer that. I just want to make it clear we need to have more discussion about the war's budgets. Let me just say I admire Mayor Jackson for having books in the atrium of City Hall and using all his power to try to promote education. I respect that very much. I also believe that education just isn't the teacher's job. And I like the fact that he's taking this on as a city priority. The President has proposed Promise Neighborhoods, which cuts across different federal departments and tries to bring resources to help our teachers deal with education. But education is all of our jobs. And we need to create a culture of learning across our communities to help our teachers, help raise the next generation. This is an extraordinary task, and each of us has special responsibility there, not just the teachers.
Congressman Kucinich, you wanted to respond. You have 30 seconds.
Frankly, my friend, if you're trying to equate a vote on a debt limit with the $547 billion that you voted on specific appropriations to give to President Bush, you know better. And the fact of the matter is, that vote on the debt limit under the Bush administration, if we had not passed it, Social Security would have been put in jeopardy. Our confidence in Social Security would have been undermined. You know, I'm also there for the seniors. And I'm not going to let seniors be the ones who are going to suffer from a quarrel between political parties over the debt.
Thank you.
The fact that this is important because
Make it brief, Mr. Veysey. We have to move on.
the fact that both of you are running to represent parts of Cleveland, yet neither of you know what Mayor Jackson's plan is, says a lot. I've read Mayor Jackson's plan. I think it's atrocious that somebody who's a sitting member of Congress hasn't looked at it. We need to put our kids first. Education is important.
Thank you, and thank you for stealing my next question, but thank you, Mr. Veysey. Thank you, candidates. We will now have the traditional City Club question and answer period. The rules to this portion are similar to the previous section. Questions addressed to a specific candidate will be answered by that person with a limit of 1 minute, with rebuttal from other candidates with a limit of 30 seconds. I will also retain the right of follow-up questions with a 30-second response. To the audience, thank you in advance for your cooperation by making your questions, stating them as briefly and as clearly as possible. Holding the microphones today, our City Club Special Initiatives Coordinator, Phil Williams, that's Phil, and Program Director, Carrie Miller, over there. First question, please.
I'm wondering if the two current candidates could respond. There's a proposed constitutional amendment that has been suggested that would end the notions of corporations being people and money equaling speech. We're not going to get anywhere on any of the issues we care about, economic, environmental, or so on, until corporations and the rich 1% no longer have incredible political power to determine what goes on in our community. So I'm wondering if either of you would support that proposed constitutional amendment, and the candidate, Mr. Veysey, would you support that as well?
Thank you. Let's start with Congresswoman Kaptur.
Nothing is more important in our country's national politics and state and local than getting the big money out. I think I've had the most consistent record of proposing constitutional amendments to overturn Buckley-Vallejo and allow states to set limits, both on contribution and spending limits in campaigns. If we look to Canada, if we look to Britain, we'll see good examples of what we should be doing. I've worked with Iowa, I've worked with New Hampshire, trying to get the Democrats in those places to make that a portal of entry in presidential races in order to get it up on the national agenda. I would support that, sir, but the legalities of controlling spending, donations as well as spending in campaigns it's very tricky turf in terms of the law. And I think the only way that we're going to be able to get at it is to pass a constitutional amendment because of free speech and other issues that enter into it. So I support what you're saying, but I think it's more complicated than that.
Congressman?
I think it was an 1895 Santa Clara County case that the Supreme Court made a decision that ended up equating or conferring on corporations a status of personhood. We need, if it takes a constitutional amendment to repeal that, we should do that. Because corporations are not people, goes without saying, but what they also do, though, they are able to escape responsibilities that are imposed on people. If corporations end up doing something that harms a person, that may result in a person's death, you don't see corporate officials going to jail. And so we need to strip any personhood rights from corporations, but make them accountable. Now, the Buckley versus Vallejo case equated money with free speech. Unfortunately, the people who have the most money are the ones who are able to talk the loudest in our economy. We also know the Citizens United case enabled corporations to intervene directly in elections. We need to change this, and I've come up with a solution. It's House Joint Resolution 100, which is a constitutional amendment that would absolutely outlaw all private money from elections so that we can have public financing, public control of our government. Private financing, private interests control the government. That's the direction we need to go and get rid of all private influences on our political process in Washington.
Thank you. Mr. Veysey?
The answer is yes. There's too much money in politics. I was happy to see that 2 Supreme Court justices said that they were going to re-examine Citizens United. But I think what needs to be examined is where the money in this race is coming from. Dennis Kucinich is using super PAC money, or super PAC money
Wait a minute.
super PAC money from Texas is supporting your candidacy. And then with Congresswoman Kaptur, the majority of her donations have come from the defense contracting business. That's why there's a problem with all the money in politics, is you've got two people who've been politicians for a combined 70 years who are part of this game. And unless we send a fresh face to Washington, we're not going to change it.
Congressman Kucinich, briefly, did Mr. Veysey get it wrong?
Once again, Mr. Veysey has made a statement in a debate that is not true. I have nothing.
Super PAC money.
Let the congressman finish.
You used the word use. Listen, I have no connection with any super PACs. Matter of fact, it's illegal to do so. And if you looked up your laws on that, you'd understand that, and you wouldn't make such a foolish charge. We have to get this kind of money out of the election process, and I stand here sit here as the one person.
Disavow that money?
You know what? You can't have any communication with people.
But
with
just tell
super
people
PACs.
that you don't support the message that they're sending out.
I don't support any super PAC that's involved in my election. Now, but
Thank
you
you.
made
Congresswoman
a charge, and
Kaptur,
you're wrong again.
Congresswoman Kaptur, 30 seconds, briefly, please.
What's very interesting about that super PAC from Texas is they're targeting women, they're targeting minorities. Over half the people they've targeted are people like myself, Jesse Jackson, Gene Schmidt, Sylvester Reyes of Texas, and I would invite the congressman from Cleveland to renounce the super PAC and not take their money. I understand they've
I don't take their money. Wait a minute. Henry, we have to straighten this out again. See, the audience has to understand that my campaign isn't taking money from a super PAC, and that's a false charge again. Please, Marcy, stop making these false charges. Then you don't need to do that.
Okay, thank you, Congressman Kucinich. We need to move on.
I have a question, and my question is, I have a concern for our seniors. There's a lot of cutbacks, especially with the nursing homes, the city services, and in addition, we're going to have another cutback with the state tax being cut for the municipalities, and I'd like to know what you would plan to do to make sure that our seniors and people with disabilities continue to get the services that they deserve.
Congressman Kucinich, you can answer first.
First of all, we need to protect Medicare, and that means opposing any attempt to voucherize Medicare or privatize it. That's number one. Number two, we need to make sure that we shift more money into Medicaid so that those who rely on that as a primary means of health care are able to get it. Now, this is a question of budget priorities, and I will say once again, when you have the Pentagon taking the lion's share of the federal budget in terms of our operating budget, you have to start cutting there, and you have to start bringing America home from around the world so we have enough money to meet the needs of our seniors. The other thing I want to say seniors are concerned about is Social Security. Social Security is rock solid through the year 2034 without any changes whatsoever. There's no need to even talk about privatizing Social Security. If Social Security needs money in the future, you just lift the caps. Seniors should be assured that I will continue to fight to protect Social Security and will continue to fight to protect Medicare and Medicaid by making sure the priorities of our country are focused on meeting the practical aspirations of our people.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Veysey.
When I talk to seniors in Toledo or Lorain, I assure them that I will protect the institutions that help to protect them. And to do that, we've got to look at the fiscal crisis that we're in, to look at how will we preserve these programs with this $15 trillion debt. And so as the only candidate that's talking about this fiscal crisis that we're in, I can tell every senior who's listening and every senior that's watching that I will champion your efforts, that your rights will be protected when I'm sitting in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Thank you, Congresswoman Kaptur.
Yes. Most Democrats have very strong records on voting to protect Social Security and Medicare for the next generation. By some actions we took last week in Congress, we assured that the middle class would not get a price hike because of the payroll taxes that come out of their checks, but we're restoring that into the Social Security Fund through general revenues. The most important thing we can do is to create more jobs in our country so more people are working and those revenues are more robust flowing into those accounts. In terms of Medicare, we took care of the doctor's reimbursement last week, and those are very important actions to keep the systems whole. But let me say that for senior citizens and for the cost of the program, we simply must have negotiated pricing for pharmaceuticals. My efforts in the Congress have not been successful. Many of us have tried in order to bring the cost down and put those dollars to those that care for those who are ill, assisted care, our nursing homes. We tried to do care at home, managed care at home, but what's happening is dollars are going into certain accounts because we don't have the ability to negotiate pharmaceutical pricing.
Thank you. Next question.
This is a follow-up, actually, because of what you've just been talking about. You can't have it both ways. I mean, Graham Veysey rightfully pointed out the growing budget deficit and the fact that it's going to go from 15 to 24. But you all sat up there and said you're going to protect the seniors, you're going to protect Medicare, you're going to protect Social Security. You can cut out the entire Defense Department, and you can't solve that problem. What will you do to get health care costs under control in this country?
Congresswoman Kaptur, would you like to begin?
I think the most important step we took in that regard was to pass the President's Affordable Care Act, where there's a huge emphasis on prevention, sir, and also women's care. The whole title's dealing with that. Because, and I've represented rural areas, when people come in with cancer twisted around their jaws and their ears because they haven't had preventive care, the cost of caring for someone like that is so much more. So I'd appreciate if you wouldn't shake your head, that you'd give it a chance to work. And also, in terms of jobs, what's happened is that so many companies don't want to pay health care, so they're shifting the burden to the government of the United States. Our answer to take care of those who are uninsured. So the real answer is to have a better system where everyone has the opportunity to procure insurance that's competitively priced. And that is the idea of these plans that are to be available to everyone. I think the emphasis on prevention, if we could adopt negotiated pricing and also put everybody back to work, we'd be in a lot better shape financially. And I agree with you, my opponent's idea that you can just shut down the Department of Defense and fund the rest of the government, there simply aren't enough dollars there to do the job, particularly when you're winding down 2 wars. So you have to be responsible, keep attention to all accounts, and I think the new Affordable Care Act is going to surprise you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Congressman Kucinich?
I never said shut down the Department of Defense. What I've said is to shut down wars, particularly those that are based on lies. I mean, I've been pretty consistent on that. Now, I want to answer your question directly. We could save $800 billion a year if we went to Medicare for All. H.R. 676 is the bill that I co-authored with John Conyers. 1 out of every $3 goes for the activities of the for-profit system. Right now, in healthcare in America, money goes for corporate profits, stock options, executive salaries, advertising, marketing, the cost of paperwork. If we took that money right there and put it into care for people, we'd have enough to cover health care for everyone in America. And it would help employers as well, because they wouldn't be hamstrung trying to provide benefits to people. Everyone would be covered. Now, there's another issue here, too. So that contributes to the budget deficit, as well as the Medicare Part D fiasco, where the government stopped negotiating with the pharmaceutical companies, as they do with veterans, and basically let the pharmaceutical companies be able to name their price for prescription drugs. War, tax cuts, bad trade agreements have all contributed to the deficit. So we can get a hold of that. At the same time, my National Employment Emergency Defense Act can get 7 million people back to work. That would help prime the pump of the economy and get America's economy moving again. Again.
Mr. Veysey?
Again, neither of my 2 opponents answered the question. And there's a 4-letter word that needs to be introduced to Washington, D.C. It's called math. And we don't see it right now, and we're not going to see it unless we have a fresh face in Washington. The important thing to look at is the Simpson-Bowles Bipartisan Debt Commission report that addresses the cap on Social Security. It would remove the $110,000 cap on Social Security. It would also index age. We, as a population, are getting older, but everybody watching and everybody listening, don't worry, because even in 2075, it will still be, Social Security will still be a program that's for people who are in their 60s. And then we've also got to address the rising health care costs, and I do think that we need to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies, because the fact that for every $2 that are spent on marketing, only $1 is spent on research and development, and that should be the priority, is research and development, not on marketing drugs to people who just need it.
Thank you. We have time for one more question from the audience. No more questions from the audience. Thank you for the questions. Now time for a closing question. Each debater will have 2 minutes to answer the closing question, including a closing statement. As determined before the program, Congressman Kucinich will go first. My question had to do with bipartisanship and working with Republicans on bills, and at this point I'm half tempted to ask the Congressman and the Congresswoman if they could get together on a bill in the future, but I'll stick to script. As Mr. Veysey has reminded us repeatedly in this campaign, congressional approval ratings are at historic lows. The partisan divide seems to be as wide as ever. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the least likely and 5 being the most, if elected, how likely will you be to work directly on bills with a Republican member of Congress? Congressman Kucinich, you have 2 minutes.
I work with Congressman Latourette all the time. It's never stopped us from, the partisan divide hasn't stopped us from working together for the benefit of the Cleveland area. I also was able to put together a coalition of over 40 members of Congress, many of them Republicans, in order to restore the prostate screening test that was in jeopardy because of a decision of an HHS panel. So, you know, in the end, there's no problem in working together. The problem is the money that's contaminating the system. Now, I want to point out to the people who are here and are listening, I've delivered for our area. I've helped save a steel mill, delivered a veterans clinic to Parma, a new bridge in Berea, helped save 375 jobs at Hugo Boss in Brooklyn, obtained a new Social Security office in Lakewood, successfully fought the privatization of jobs at DFAS, and have relentlessly defended the NASA Glenn Research Center. I secured $422 million for foreclosure prevention in Ohio, and $29 million to help veterans who are victims of Gulf War illness. I've delivered, but I'm not satisfied with that because we have to do more to rebuild our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our sewer systems. I've determined how to do this, creating millions of jobs, debt-free, to put America back to work and seed the green, high-tech economy of tomorrow. I'm prepared to do this, and I need your support. There are differences between my friend from Toledo and myself. She voted to fund Bush's wars. I did not. She voted for the Patriot Act. I did not. She supports the Keystone Pipeline. I do not. I've worked relentlessly for safety at Davis-Besse. She has not. I supported the DREAM Act. She opposed it. I support marriage equality. She opposes it. I fully support choice. She opposes it. When you contrast our records, my stands show that I'm in touch with the people, that I understand the needs of the people of this community, and I dare say the needs of people across this district. I'm asking for your support in this election so that I can continue to be there, to stand up, speak out, fight for you, and to get results. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman Kucinich. Next, Mr. Veysey.
Thank you so much for the prelude. My name is Graham Veysey, and I'm running because Congress is broken and there hasn't been enough bipartisanship in Washington and in Congress specifically. I've talked about the $15 trillion debt. There will be $26 trillion in 10 years unless we do something about it. Well, I'm doing something about it. I'm talking about it. I'm calling for the Simpson-Bowles Bipartisan Debt Commission report to be taken off the shelf, dusted off, and implemented. I've talked today about not just reaching across the aisle, but standing in the aisle if it means getting things done. I've racked up thousands of miles on my Jeep driving from Toledo to Cleveland, visiting communities in Lorain, Sandusky, Parma, Berea, and everybody tells me the same thing. It's time to give someone else a chance. When you've got two people who've been politicians for combined 70 years, and you look at what they've delivered. In Toledo, Ms. Kaptur's Toledo, the #1 rise in poverty in America. Dennis Kucinich, the #2 in terms of rate of poverty for big cities in America. That 1-2 poverty punch is unacceptable. And what I'll do is I'll fight hard to try to lift these communities out of poverty. Now, I think that we can, as a region, build on the manufacturing base that made this region as strong as it was and as strong as it will be. We need to shed the Rust Belt image and become the digital belt, where we can have the data servers for technology companies all over the world be based here in northern Ohio and fill warehouses. I was always taught that if you break it, you buy it, you own it. Well, they've broken it, but it's going to be my generation that's going to have to own it. So we should have a seat at the table, and we're presenting fresh ideas so that people out there who are listening, March 6th is a referendum on Congress, and you can either vote for the same old, or you can vote for the future. You can say no to the past, and you can vote for somebody who's going to introduce fresh ideas to Congress, because it should be one of the greatest democratic pillars of our society, and right now, it's not.
So on a scale of 1 to 5?
I'd be the most bipartisan candidate up here.
Thank you. Congresswoman Kaptur.
Yes, you can't survive in Congress unless you can work on a bipartisan basis. You can't survive and accomplish anything without that. Let me just say that the seniority that I hold is very important to Cleveland. It's very important to Lorain. It's important to Sandusky and Toledo. There's no one in the top 10 on either side of me on the Appropriations Committee that delivers consistently across this region than myself. How can a candidate who purports to be a working person's candidate during this campaign suggest that the largest employer in Ottawa County, which has a 13.3% unemployment rate, shut down that county's largest employer? How can that candidate oppose the Keystone Pipeline, which is so vital to creating hundreds of industrial jobs, refining jobs, and steel jobs across the North Coast? How can he be against defense bills that support firms like Alcoa and Materion and magnesium and titanium companies across this coast when he votes no on their funding? This gentleman to my left opposed commuter rail to Lorain and Sandusky. Even Sherrod Brown is quoted as saying that he killed it. When I look at the congressman from Cleveland, I really ask myself how he can claim to have any jobs successes. I was over at Alcoa the other day, and they had a ceremony on their press. The gentleman claimed that he helped save Alcoa. Here, his name's not even on the agenda because he had nothing to do with it, though he claims credit for it. I voted for the bills that provide the funding for Alcoa and companies like that to modernize. So I think people should ask themselves, who has been fighting hardest for jobs along the coast, whether it's in the solar industry, the maritime industry, the steel industry. I supported President Obama on revival in the automotive industry for the first time across this region, in Brook Park, in Avon Lake, in Toledo, in Sandusky, in Parma. People are being hired from off the streets. I am the strongest jobs candidate in this race. And the people of the 9th District have a serious question to ask themselves, and that is, who can deliver? Who can deliver for Toledo, for Ottawa County, Erie County, Lorain County, and Cuyahoga County? Thank you very much. Would appreciate your support.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our debate. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to a debate between Democratic candidates running for Ohio's 9th Congressional District. I want to thank the audience, the candidates Veysey, Kaptur, and Kucinich, the moderator Henry Gomez, and our listening audience. Thanks to IdeaStream for broadcast support and the Plain Dealer. And thank you. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.